So, this is for all my Patreon members who are so gracious with their support and um, their financial support that's helping me build out some of the things to get D3Soccer.fans up to snuff, especially for 2024, which is costing a little bit more money than I anticipated. But don't tell my wife. But anyhow, Coach, thanks for hanging for another couple of minutes here. Let's start with the hard one first, which is the NCAA decision thrown, like, literally. I had a conversation with Coach Bianco at Denison. Um, I think it was April 3rd, where he's like, "There's no discussion. We're waiting to hear," to yesterday, the decision dropping that, "Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to go with pairwise, and we're going to change the way that you're selected for the at-large bids will be selected through pairwise," which changes the dynamic substantially from the little bit I understand. So, could you get your thoughts on what's going on, whatever you've experienced so far? Any color you could provide would be fantastic.
Well, I don't know if I'll be able to add any more than what Brandon knows. He's the
Yeah.
king of the information for that. I just say it's being on the rack previously, and we've been lucky enough to be, or unlucky enough because we're waiting to see if we get an at-large bid or not in a few years recently. Knowing that some of the discussions come down to whether a team is ranked high or not, comes down to, well, it's how you schedule. You got to play the good teams.
Mhm.
You got to get those ranked wins, and particularly for a team that like won a ton of games or even undefeated, and they're not getting looks at large bids because they're playing a weaker schedule. And so the response would be, well, they need to get in and schedule tougher games. Well, that's not possible for next year. So they flip in, a formula-based strategy to deal with at-large teams, but uh, we don't know how it works. So, like, who should I have scheduled? Just all very strong teams? Uh, I'm not sure that's how pairwise works, and I'm not sure anybody knows totally how pairwise works. So I I want to have trust that people did their due diligence to work this system out, so it is better than all the other systems that are available. But I've seen other processes uh, in motion that I haven't quite agreed with. The multiplier that existed, I think, back in the 16, 2016, 2015 timeframe, they had a multiplier for away games and home games that didn't serve the function that it was intended to, and so they got rid of it. Are we going to experiment next year? It seems like it's more of an experiment instead of, we know exactly how this is going to pan out. And so I don't like experiments that I like experiments. I like the scientific method, but not when it counts.
Mhm.
Uh, when it counts, I want to have trust that everything's in line, and I don't have to doubt that. Okay, is this just a number system, and it takes out um, opinions and subjectivity? I like that. I like it if it's like, this is what the numbers say. If we get to a model that's kind of like, well, that's in terms of track, that's the fastest person. They ran the fastest
Yeah, yeah.
time. There's no opinion about it. They were the fastest one, so they go on, right?
Mhm.
Well, if we can get to a model like that, that's great by me. But if that model is messed up or not as accurate as they propose it to being, well, yeah, I'm nervous about that.
I asked Coach Bianco this, and I wasn't sure I got an answer that at least stuck with me. That I said, okay, it just strikes me that this is a solution for a problem that didn't exist, right? Like, or at least, again, I'm not totally on the outside, so somebody could come here and tell me here are the 15 problems that we've been having every year, and this resolves them. That might be the case. I just don't know. But like, why? Let's just accept that every sport is different. Considerations for the tournament are different based on the particulars of a particular sport, right? Like, and yet here they are coming up with this blanket methodology for picking tournament teams. I just don't understand, like, what were the issues that led them down this route, because it didn't seem like it was. I mean, we could quibble, like you could. Again, I just go back to,
I
hey, Connecticut
yeah, I
College,
I don't know if I
Western
agree.
Connecticut.
I don't know if I agree with that statement. Uh,
Okay.
I think, you know, I think people grumble about, well, this team shouldn't have gotten in, and this
Oh,
team
no, no,
should
that
have.
I agree with, but I'm just saying it's one, like, every year there's one team, and well, there's limited spots, and so I'm totally willing to say, like, my opinion about Western Connecticut, right? Whatever the ways in which the decision was made 2 years ago, Western Connecticut was out, and they were undefeated, and then this year, just because Mount Union, right, my alma mater, could have legitimately made a claim for a spot for an at-large bid, but they didn't get. So I get that there's going to be one or two, but I think by and large, at least again, my in the last 3 years that I've been watching this stuff, there's not these tremendous outliers who'd be like, that one doesn't make it. Like this, where are they thinking here? What are they thinking there? Whereas I think, again, the little bit that I've been understanding, I mean, there are some really good teams that made the tournament that went far. Washington and Lee that would not have made the tournament had pairwise been instituted. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Just from a soccer, I'm watching, I see the results, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. I, I, what I will say is, like, if anybody's disgruntled, even if there's one out of a hundred disgruntled, there's
Hmm.
probably going to be a thought of how can we get to 100 out of 100.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, just for I would want to lean towards efficiency's sake, if that was possible. Can
Hmm.
we get to 100? But is the risk of getting to 100 mean that we're going to now next year drop from one disgruntled to 10 or 20? Then
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
no.
Yeah. It's the
Let's
wrong
make sure as
direction.
we move
Yeah.
towards 100 out of 100 efficiency,
Hmm.
uh, we're evaluating correctly, that we're not taking something that is very close to being good,
Hmm.
uh, and making it worse.
Hmm.
I don't know. I initially did study a pairwise just to see, like, if I could find, because in November you still might have a chance to deal with the schedule, and maybe modify it a little bit. But um, yeah, I'm concerned when I'm hearing things that, like, well, okay, we ran these models and these teams wouldn't have been included. Well, that doesn't sound good. But I also have limited information about
Yeah.
pairwise,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there are, I think, sliding scales of,
Hmm.
like, SOS or ranked wins or whatever,
Hmm.
that I really don't have the uh, technical knowledge to be able
Yeah.
to say, okay, here they're getting this wrong here. If they just move the scale like this or
Yeah.
that, it will fix it. I think Brandon probably
Yeah.
addressed that,
Yeah.
but I don't have the information to, I trust Brandon.
Yeah.
Um, but there might be some information in there that we don't know, that makes it solid.
Hmm.
But hopefully, uh, but but in principle, for me, I tried to strive towards 100 out of 100.
Yeah.
So if we can get the most efficient system, I'm for that. But if we're just experimenting, I'm not for that
Mm.
at all.
I would I'm going to agree with you, right? Like I'm okay with, hey, how do you make something more efficient? I think if you don't, it just over time it just, right, it just becomes weaker over time, right? It doesn't, you always have to sort of build in this cadence of how can we do it better next year? How can we do it better next year? This to me just seems like, hey, how can we go from, one out of 100 being disgruntled to your point, which is there's a possibility that you can disgruntle a lot of people. And then I'll just add, again, my limited understanding as well. I have a real issue of any type of ranking that, rather than accommodating, rather than differentiating between better or worse teams on your schedule, instead of figuring that out, they just take out the bad teams, right? So you could conceivably, your 15, 20 game schedule ends up looking, from a pairwise perspective, well, you only played 10 games. Like, that to me doesn't make back of the envelope sense. And don't pretend to be smart enough to understand that, but
Yeah, and the way I come at that is, well, that's basically a model that I've heard from the Division One RPI system that is
mm-hmm,
criticized in that they can go win a game and their RPI drops because of who they played. So
mm-hmm.
they're screwed if they do, and they're screwed if they
If they
don't.
didn't, yeah,
So I think that was probably a function that intrigued people that had
yeah,
heard that criticism a lot. It's like, well, this solves that. That
yeah,
you know, if you play a team that's going to pull your RPI down, we'll just throw it out.
yeah,
Not thinking like it's an
yeah,
experiment, like not
yeah,
possibly thinking of like, well, wait a minute,
yeah,
like they've got 20 games thrown out,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
they're only
yeah,
left with one game, and
yeah.
that puts them at number one.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
so uh, yeah,
I think to me, and I've said this before, to me, it's like I judge, and I try very hard. It's not easy, obviously, but I judge you, Johns Hopkins, on your body of work, not by 3 goals or 3 games or 4 games or 5 games, 10, whatever that number is. I look at your entire, I try to watch you throughout the season. Oh, you hit a bump here. How did you recover? I try to, again, it's the human mind versus a AI model or whatever it is, whatever kind of calculations it does. But I don't say, they're gonna hate me for this, but I'm not gonna say, oh, you played. I'm making it up. McDaniel. You played McDaniel, and oh, McDaniel's not, in another world, isn't worth a hill of beans. So I'm not going. I don't believe that, but I'm just trying to come up with a really bad example. Um, right? Like I don't dismiss your performance against McDaniel because I don't think McDaniel is a team that's worthy of you playing. Right? I look at, hey, how'd you do against McDaniel? I just, to me, it's just part of it. So I don't understand. Again, there's a lot I don't understand, like you. It just doesn't pass my slot, like back of the envelope logical. I hear this. This doesn't make sense to me. So, um, all
yeah.
right, all right. So we've beaten this one. So I appreciate the candor, though. I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do. I do appreciate the candor because I do. Right, like to me. Here's the other thing. This the way I understand it, who are the teams that are going to benefit? They're the ones that I think are lower in what I would think of the ladder, right? Like, okay, your top 100 is going to benefit the lower end because there's more ways in which the system will manipulate their how they get ranked. Who does it hurt? It hurts the top 20, top 40, top 50 teams, right? That are in the thick of it, in the mix of it. They're as good as they can get and competing all the way to their conference tournaments. And I don't know, but Johns Hopkins, you lose your conference tournament and you could still have this phenomenal record. You're out, and that's the part where I'm like, why would Johns Hopkins be out? They have had a fantastic season, play all these great games, but from some black box it says Johns Hopkins is out. I think that's where I think it's team that upper end teams that'll more than likely get hurt than helped by this. But I've stood on a soapbox. I apologize. Um,
It's all right. Yeah,
uh,
I think I've heard comments that maybe Brandon said this. I've talked to a few people about this, so I'm getting confused who said what. But that the advice was just play games you can win.
mhm,
Uh, to me, that leads into uh, the past where I've seen teams that have incredible records, but their SOS is in the 400s.
mhm,
And so if if that's accurate statement, then possibly we could see the teams that played really weak schedules but had a great record are going to supplant the teams that you know play tough conferences, play tough schedules, and are right there, usually on the line of being considered for at large bids, uh, and played a lot of ranked teams and proved they can hang with those teams as opposed teams that never played the hard schedule. And so what they proved was they could rattle off wins against teams that
mhm.
aren't as strong. And so what's going to happen when they get into the tournament? Maybe they
Yeah,
can, maybe they're good enough, but they just haven't shown it on their
right.
resume. But it's more likely that they haven't been tested at that point, and so uh, they're not possibly up for the challenge.
Mhm.
Where a team that, like in the Centennial, NESCAC,
Yeah,
UAA,
yeah.
there's a lot of good conferences out there that have consistently have to play strong opponents and shown that they get results against those strong opponents,
Mhm.
have a legit chance to win the national championship, a la Tufts' first national
Yeah,
championship,
yeah, yeah.
right? So yeah,
All right.
that's
Okay, let's move on.
okay.
Last one. I was like, oh, we're gonna do this whole Patreon thing, a bunch of questions, and I have one more question for you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
When I
glad it's behind this paywall too.
yeah yeah, I knew it, and I had to. You've been experimenting with a new method of taking penalty kicks
Yep.
where there's no run up to the ball, and
Hmm.
I want to ask, and have you been have you made any more progress in figuring that out?
Maybe.
Can I ask? Can I ask? So can I explain what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
In a typical penalty kick, guy puts the ball down, takes a bunch of steps back, does some sort of run up at the whistle, and hits the ball. There is conclusive evidence, I think, whereby the more time somebody takes, whether that is time before they actually kick or distance to their run up, the greater chance that a goalkeeper can make the save on a penalty kick. So,
You've seen that?
yeah, I just actually heard it the other day from somebody else who said time is the biggest killer for the kicker, not for the goalkeeper. Because it makes the thought theory is that it makes the and somebody at like Oxford or somebody like I'm looking for the actual paper did an analysis of timed penalty kicks. I don't know if it was Oxford, but somebody wrote a paper on the time it takes from the whistle to you actually kicking, and then what is the result of your kick. And so they say the longer that time is, there's an increase in a chance that a goalkeeper saves it or you don't score. So it could go out, you could mishit it, all that kind of stuff. So
Uh, that is not true.
really,
I I think I mean I think it may be true in how they're interpreting the input that they're taking in, the data that they're taking in.
mm-hmm.
But I am very confident that 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 is that they're missing some data. Uh, I also and that's just my reference. I'll also use another reference in that there's a very successful Division One program
Mhm.
that has won uh, multiple national championships, and their head coach got tons of data. Like he had access to, I believe, Premier League data about PKs. He won't let uh, he won't let a PK taker take a PK from inside the 18. The kicker has to start the run from outside the 18.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Now I'm intrigued. Now I'm intrigued. Can you divulge who that coach is?
No.
No. Damn you. Well, at
So I
least
mean, this
you'll
started
tell me
in
when we don't record. No, I'm just.
2017. I went, 2017. I was upset
Mhm.
because we were number one seed in our conference. We had beaten Dickinson substantially in the regular season. We were paired up against them in the semifinals, and they knocked us out on PKs.
Mhm.
And so I was upset about that. We had also, lost some PKs in previous seasons. So this was a buildup of like
Yeah, yeah.
just getting tired of the whole PK situation. And then we went to Tufts, Sweet 16, and lost in PK. So, like, we don't get a trophy for conference because of PKs. Our run at the national champion stopped in PKs, and so I came away tired of losing the PKs, and so I went out seeking better better ways of doing things. I did find some information that helped. There's a lot of things to do that people just don't think about. It did help, but not enough. 2022, we played Muhlenberg
Muhlenberg, and you lost some PKs.
in our conference final.
Yeah,
I felt like that game we were extremely dominant.
yeah,
For anybody who wants to go check out the box
yeah,
score
yeah,
and see how that game went. And that game I think went. There was a Champions game late, a game Man City versus Real
yeah,
Madrid.
yeah.
Um,
Very much so. I watched. I remember that game because I have a buddy of mine whose son plays for Muhlenberg, and actually, I think he scored the winning PK. Um,
mhm,
and saying that you were extremely dominant might be an understatement. I thought.
yeah.
I thought. It's
So,
like
uh, and
doesn't
they
make
and
me
they,
feel any
you
better,
know,
but
they also had a game plan for our
yeah,
PKs.
yeah,
They were actively coaching during the
uh huh,
PKs, right?
yeah,
And then, we got a favorable draw in the tournament. We got the Stevens Tech, who played excellent, and we get the PKs. We're one PK away from going to the Final Four,
yeah,
and we missed.
yeah,
And then it went to sudden death, and we missed that one as well.
yeah.
And so that was the point. I was just like, I'm tired of this. So um, I went on a mission to solve it. Lots of people laughed at me. We'll see how it goes.
All right, so I have to ask. I know you're working on this, so now you basically put a subject in my head that I think I'm going to have to look at. I'm going to have to go look at penalty kicks and come up with my own conclusions. But did you have anybody this year who tried your, I'll just say, no approach penalty kick?
Um, we only had we did a scrimmage against Catholic,
Hmm.
and we got a PK. And I knew I had one follower at that point. And so he had been practicing it to the
Hmm.
point where I felt confident his percentage was high.
Hmm.
Uh, he took it, and it worked perfect. But
Does it freeze the goalkeeper?
yeah,
You're not going to say.
I mean, you're standing at the ball. What can you do?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. All right, we're gonna have to continue this conversation another day, just on penalty kicks, 'Cause I'm seriously, like, since we had that conversation, I've tried it myself, just trying to goof around, seeing how it feels. It feels awkward, I will say, but yeah, anyhow, just leave it at that. I'm not an expert in the, Craig Appleby penalty kick, like, because it's gonna go down with your name on it if you get it going, so, um Coach, hey, thank you for this. Thank you on behalf of all the Patreon supporters. Thank you for your time. It is always great talking to you. I learned tons. So, wish you all the best. Hopefully, we can connect one of these times when I'm down in Baltimore. And yeah, hopefully we can connect soon. But thank you very much.
Thank you.